to go.
Cool!
Hey everyone, it's Nux, and yeah, I'm back with another video. This is probably not a video you're expecting because considering the time period that this video should be going up, like there's some other topics that I probably could be talking about, you know. For example, there's a lot of rumors that a Nintendo Direct is coming up and I should probably, you know, get ready for that, like get a prediction video or maybe get ready to do my usual live reaction. And don't worry, I'll still be covering that Direct, but I don't know if I'm going to be doing a live reaction this time because I might be busy during the Direct. It depends on when Nintendo does it, but if I'm not busy during when this Direct could potentially happen, then I don't know. Like, I should be able to cover it like usual, but we'll see what happens with that. And there's another video I was considering doing in place of this one, but I ended up not being happy with how the audio for that one came out, and I just overall think that the timing for doing that video probably wouldn't be the best, so I decided to put that one on the back burner. I may not even do it at all, potentially, so that left me kind of, you know, without a video for this week, potentially, if I'm not going to be able to do the Direct. So I decided that this is a time where I should once again do something fun, you know, do something that I actually feel like covering, because again, one of the reasons I haven't done too many videos lately is I feel like there's not that many videos I can cover that are 100% fun for me. Like, I want to make video making fun for me, so I'm going to talk about topics or ideas that I actually feel like talking about, similar to like that AI Nintendo Cinematic Universe video, a video I just did just to screw around. Although, if you're wondering where that video went, I unlisted it for the time of being because obviously things are getting really controversial with AI and all that stuff, so yikes, I decided I was going to unlist that one for the time being. Maybe I'll make it public again when all that stuff cools down, but for the time of being, I'm going to leave that one unlisted because I just think it doesn't look right on my channel as of now with all the craziness with AI and what it's doing to Hollywood and jobs overall, so I'm just gonna back away from that controversy. And we're gonna do something a little more fun, and how are we gonna do this? Well, I'm going to take a look at our Lord and Savior, Sonic. When all else fails, crawl back to our blue Lord and Savior. And it's been a while since I've done like just a straight up fun conceptual Sonic video where I'm not like ranting. And don't be confused, I'm probably still gonna find some way to rant about Sonic the Hedgehog in this video, but I'm gonna prioritize just, you know, talking about something fun and interesting with Sonic, and that is an idea that hasn't really been cooking for too long in my head, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought, okay, this could actually be really cool for Sonic if they decide to do this. I mean, it's possible. Sonic has done things like this before, and he's ventured into all sorts of areas, but obviously because of Sonic Team and Sega, the execution has been to mixed results, to say the least. But anyway, without any more further teasing, let's get into it. So, I want to talk about an idea I have for a cool, short Sonic animated series. Now, obviously, one thing people in the Sonic community talk about a lot is the possibility of a new full Sonic anime series, you know, something like Sonic X or something like Sonic Prime, but more anime focused and more focused around the energy of the mainline games. That's obviously something I also really want to see again too. But considering the state of where Sonic is right now, to where I don't think necessarily Sonic is particularly like suffering to the point to where like he can't afford to do jack all, but I also don't think like he's in this golden age like some fans will have you believe, but it's a weird position to say the least. So I don't think we're going to be seeing a Sonic anime series anytime soon. Like, I think Prime is going to be the main thing they peddle for a hot minute. So if we're not going to be able to get like this cool Sonic anime series, I think something cool that they could do is like maybe a short Sonic anime series that can focus on all sorts of moments throughout Sonic history and animate them, like just so that we could get some cool action sequences or a look into some elements of the Sonic series that the series itself doesn't really explore too often. Like, I think that could be really cool. Instead of something like, you know, the Mania shorts or the Team Sonic Racing short that just kind of feels a little more fillerish to me, we could get something extremely cool like this anime series that really gives us a chance to see some cool Sonic moments actually animated well. And a big inspiration for this idea is Sonic Frontiers Divergence, the prologue thing. Like, I really love that animation because it did a lot of justice to Knuckles' character for once, and it did a good job of making the premise of Frontiers look cool, at least in a general sense. And I think if we got more of that, that could be really cool. So let me pull up the original tweet that inspired this idea, because what got the gears rolling for this idea was me comparing like this to Pokemon Generations and Pokemon Evolutions. And to give some context, that's an animated series for the Pokemon franchise, to where like they animate key moments throughout the Pokemon series. And what they basically do is they have a few episodes to represent like each generation, and they animate like key moments or these small stories that take place in the Pokemon game universe, and like make them look really cool and clean and polished with the animation. And I think if we got something like that, but for Sonic, it could be really cool and could be like a nice thing to get in place of a full, you know, Sonic anime series that I don't think is going to be happening. So yeah, that's what this general idea is about. Like, what would a theoretical, like, historical Sonic animated series kind of look like? You know, a series that could animate some of the best moments throughout the series. Like, it could obviously focus on the mainline games, and it could even get into spin-off territory, which I think could be really fun, and that's the reason why I want to discuss this idea. So let's talk about it. So to give an idea of my outline for this, first of all, obviously I based it a lot on Pokemon Generations, because Pokemon Generations was like a big inspiration for this. Like, I've rewatched Pokemon Generations, that series, so many times, it's not even funny. Like, the justice that series does to various little game moments throughout the Pokemon franchise is just so, like, that series is just so well animated. Like, the voice acting is pretty decent, and just overall, I imagine like this theoretical Sonic series looking just like that. Now, obviously, we can't call it Sonic Generations because that just so happens to be the name of one of the games. But I don't know, we could call it something like Sonic the Hedgehog 𝗧𝗵𝗺 or something like that. Don't hold me to that title, because that's just a name I made up on the fly. But yeah, so I imagine this being similar to Pokemon Generations. Now, Pokemon Generations had up to 18 episodes. So I originally was like, okay, well, let's look at the mainline Sonic games and split them between 18 episodes. Like, maybe what we can do is, instead of like splitting a few episodes per generation, because Sonic obviously doesn't work like Pokemon, to where like Pokemon at that time had like, I think 6 to 7 generations, as to where Sonic is more so split between like these eras, and the eras are like very weirdly defined, and yeah, like, I don't think it would quite work the same. So I think what we should do is, if we have 18 episodes, let's give like each game an episode. I think that could be something really cool to do. Like, each game can like have their own little role in an episode, and I think that would be really cool. However, what I decided to do is I decided to bump it up to 22, because I don't think 18 episodes is necessarily enough. Because 18, you definitely could like just fit 18 mainline Sonic games between 18 episodes. But the problem is, I wanted to add a few more extra episodes just to like really get a solid grasp on the overall Sonic series. Now, if we really wanted to, we could stick to 18 episodes and just get like those essential mainline games. But the reason why I don't want to do that is, I just know like that would make this series so much lamer than it could be. Because what Sega is going to do is, they're obviously going to focus on the classic era, the 2010s era, the Colors era, and probably like barely give us much love for the Adventure era or the 2000s era games. And I just know like they would do that, and it would suck, bro, because like the 2010 stuff, I get it. Like, some people do love that stuff, and don't worry, I am planning to represent that stuff even for games I don't like, I am planning to mostly represent that stuff in this series theoretically. But like, I really want this series to also cover like the actually good Sonic games, and just overall, just give a good idea of some of the series' best moments instead of focusing on, oh, nostalgia, oh, the 𝗬𝗲, because those are the only good games. Like, please, bro, can we actually like show some respect to the overall franchise, similar to like a game like Sonic Generations did. Like, Sonic Generations wasn't afraid to adapt a zone from Sonic 06. Like, let's adapt something from that. You know, like, realistically, would Sonic Team and Sega do that? Probably not, because we know how they do. But like, in my theoretical idea for this series, I'm gonna give some love to the overall franchise. Next, let's talk about how I'm splitting this, because obviously, like I said, we're gonna have a game or a set of games represented per episode, and like I said, I'm bumping it up to 22. And you're probably thinking, well, there aren't 22 mainline Sonic games, right? Because that doesn't sound right. Basically, what I decided to do is I obviously prioritized mainline games, but I also mixed in some spin-off stuff and some games that are like more vaguely and debatably mainline, because I feel like there's no solid grasp on what counts as mainline with the Sonic series. Like, I've tried to like look up and see if there's like an official listing of mainline Sonic games, but I feel like there isn't, and the fans kind of just like make up stuff as we go, and there's all sorts of headcanons bumping heads. So like, I don't know. I didn't know which games to count as mainlines, which games to prioritize for this series, so there might be like some game missing that you're probably mad didn't get represented in my listing here. And to that, I just say, like, I'm sorry if I didn't cover a specific Sonic game in my ideas for these series in these 22 episodes, but if I don't cover a game, it's because I just don't consider it mainline. Like, I don't consider it like this major, like, pinpoint in Sonic history. So I apologize for that if there's a game missing and that didn't get represented in this series, but I think for the most part, the games that I covered are the mainline ones, and there's only one that's like debatably really like in the spin-off territory for sure, but the rest I'm pretty sure, you know, at least to some degree count as mainline, especially when you consider like the characters and the gameplay of said games. Next, also where I took some inspiration from Pokemon Generations, is I decided that not only would I like focus on capturing a specific key moment from a Sonic game for an episode, but I also want to intertwine it with the actual characters of the franchise, because that's something Pokemon Generations did. Like, not only did they focus on animating and capturing a key moment in Pokemon history, but they also intertwined it with a specific character. Like, for example, in the episode where like they focus on AZ, they obviously focus on the overall story of XY and AZ's weapon, but it very much dives into the psyche and the ideals of AZ as a character. And same with like the episodes of like that focus on Groudon or Kyogre and stuff like that. Like, you can very much see that there's a central character that the episode focuses on. So that's kind of also what I want to do. I want each episode to specifically focus on a character along with the game events. So you'll notice that I point out a specific character alongside which game event I want animated for an episode of this series. So yeah, and again, there's gonna be some characters that might not get an episode or might get left out that some people are gonna be peeved about, but again, I'm mainly prioritizing what I consider mainline Sonic games and whichever other games I'm adding into this category. So if there's a character or a game moment I don't get represented in my lineup for these ideas, then I very much apologize for that. But that's just the way I'm doing it. But okay, I think I've mostly covered everything in terms of the basic setup for the series. Oh yeah, there is one more area I did want to touch, which is the obviously, what would I be styling the series as? Now, again, I already gave a theoretical name, which would be Sonic the Hedgehog 𝗬𝗃. Again, don't hold me to that. That's like a placeholder name. But what about other areas, such as the animation style or the voice acting? Now, ideally, I would want it to have animation quality on par with a series like Pokemon Generations, but I don't know if Sega is going to be able to go for that, especially if this is something that goes up to like 22 or even 18 episodes. Like, I don't think every episode is going to be on par with something like Pokemon Generations, especially since Sega is much more stingy with their money, especially when it comes to something that isn't promoting whatever the latest Sonic game is. So maybe the animation quality would be more on par with that Sonic Frontiers short, which is Divergence, which I would be fine with, because again, that is a really solid short. Like, it wasn't super amazing animation wise, but it did have some decent moments that I think make it worthwhile in my opinion. So if we got like up to 18 or 22 episodes of that, that could be cool. But again, realistically, we'd probably maybe get like at most 12. Like, we get like the Sonic Generations treatment. Like, maybe like we'd represent the eras and we'd get like 1 episode per, or 3 episodes per era. Like 3 episodes per classic era, 3 episodes per Dreamcast era, even though calling the 2000s Dreamcast era is so dumb. But, and then 3 episodes for 2010s era, which I think is stupid, but that's realistically what might happen. But no, I'm going all out in this. I'm going 22 episodes. Each episode represents a game and has a character intertwined with a story, and that's that. And then the last thing I want to talk about, which is voice acting. And this is the part that like hurts me the most, because realistically, let's be real, Sega would probably utilize the current Sonic the Hedgehog cast, and as I've talked about in many previous Sonic videos, that doesn't sound like the most amazing thing. So maybe if, you know, if I don't want the voice acting utilized, I could have it to where, like, obviously we have these amazingly animated moments, but maybe there's like minimal voice acting. But I don't really want that, because I feel like there's so many Sonic moments that need voice acting. Like, there are so many great moments in this series that require voice acting and the characters actually talking and not just being mute. Like, people try and make Sonic out as this series that is just pretty much all action and that's the best of the best of the series, but no, this series has had some legitimately cool moments when it comes to just the characters talking and interacting. So that's kind of what I want this series to capture as well. So yeah, I would have voice acting, but ideally I would want it to have a mix of maybe some of the current cast, some new voice actors, but realistically it might just be the current cast, which would that would not be the best ideal way for this series to go for me. But whatever, man. Like, in my ideally for me, it would be like a new cast. Like, maybe not necessarily the prime cast or the movie cast or even like the game cast, but like just some quick one-time voice actors they pull in for this series. But whatever, man. Let's not even think about that. Now I will give my idea for each of these episodes, and let's get started. This is where the true fun begins. Spoiler alert, but one of the series of games that I don't count as mainline and thus don't give an episode in this series to is the Sonic Boom games. And I'm telling y'all right now, if I see comments complaining or trying to debate Sonic Boom as mainline, that's gonna be really ironic and funny to me. All I'm gonna say. Okay, so it's time to lay out my ideas for each of the episodes. So again, we have 22 episodes, each episode having a loose game themed after it or set of games, and loosely tied to one specific character from the series. So I'm going to try and go through this as fast as I can, so let's get this party started. So episode 1. So episode 1 is going to take some inspiration from, again, Pokemon Generations, in that this one is kind of not necessarily going to be a traditional episode. This one is going to be kind of an introduction to the series, where it's going to start with nostalgia. We're going to get that classic Sega Flash, Sega, you know, that Flash, and we're going to see normal gameplay of Sonic running through Green Hill, but then that's going to transition into the animated style of the series, and it's going to be a montage of multiple moments throughout the series of just Sonic, you know, running through zones and just showing, his history of his games. And that's kind of what I want this to do. Similar to how the first episode of Pokemon Generations focused on Pikachu, like, traveling between regions. I want that to be this first episode, like, to represent Sonic 1. Basically, it's going to be an episode that shows how far we've come from just running in Green Hill Zone, to running in Emerald Coast, to running in Seaside Hill, to just running between these different zones throughout the various Sonic games. That's what I want this first episode to be. And obviously the character this is going to focus on the most is, of course, Sonic, because he's the protagonist of this series. And him running and adventuring is kind of a big part of his character. So I think it makes sense that his centric episode, and the episode that really focuses in on Sonic 1, is just overall an episode that shows the growth of this series. Like, you could argue that I'm kind of cheating a bit, because I could just give Sonic 1 its own dedicated episode, but I kind of don't want to do that, because I'm sick of you, Sonic 1. If I'm being entirely honest, like, if we're talking, like, realistically and what Sega and Sonic Team would do, of course they'd give Sonic 1 its own episode, but I'm not doing that. I'm gonna cheat. So yeah, that's episode 1. Next up is episode 2, and this obviously is gonna focus on Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which is obviously, a game that means a lot to me. And when picking a key moment from this, it was tough, because there's all sorts of cool zones in this game and little moments you could probably adapt. But what I ultimately decided is I want this episode to be a loose adaptation of the game's finale, where we're getting flashes of Sonic's, fight with the Death Egg robot. But what it's also doing is it's cutting to Tails, worrying about Sonic, and he's gonna have some flashbacks to when he met Sonic. And then the short is ultimately going to end with him coming in to save Sonic on his plane. And I think that would be such a beautiful way to portray Sonic 2. Not only does it capture the cool finale of that game, but it captures Sonic and Tails' friendship. And thus, it's just a good episode that captures some of the best elements of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 as a game. Next up is episode 3, and this one is going to be Sonic, Free, and Knuckles. Yes, Sonic, Free, and Sonic and Knuckles are going to be bundled together here, and they're just going to represent one episode. So yeah, and who do I focus this episode on? Obviously Knuckles. And what I decided to do for the key moment of this one is I decided this one is going to kind of take a page from Sonic Frontiers, the prologue, Divergence, to where we're going to focus on Knuckles and his thoughts on Angel Island. We're going to see him wandering Angel Island and kind of thinking about his life, growing up alone all his life, and maybe thinking about the history of the Akin tribe. Now, obviously, he's not going to know everything that he does in Sonic Adventure, so we're not going to have exactly those flashbacks yet, but I think it would be really cool to, just see how Knuckles lived his life on Angel Island, obviously before Eggman comes in and warns him of Sonic and Tails coming in, and then that's going to lead to him, eventually confronting Sonic in the Hidden Palace. That's what I want this episode to do. Like, the first bit of it is just, we're seeing Knuckles living his quiet, peaceful life on Angel Island, kind of wondering, about his duty and all that stuff. But then, he's going to meet Eggman, get tricked by him, and then I want to see a little bit of his fight and animated with him in Hidden Palace. Now, technically, this is kind of already all animated, because if I'm correct, Sonic Origins loosely animates these moments, because it animates, the scene of Eggman tricking Knuckles, and it animates that clash in Hidden Palace a bit, so it kind of does that, but I want to see it again. But, obviously focusing a little more on Knuckles' perspective, and obviously having that somber energy that Sonic Frontiers Divergence did. Like, and even with voice acting, because obviously that stuff was mute. I want this series to have some voice acting, so I think that could be really cool in terms of what to do for episode 3. Next is episode 4, and this is interesting. So for this one, I chose Sonic CD. I think obviously debatably Sonic CD becomes before Sonic, Free, and Knuckles, but I don't care, I just made it episode 4. And for this one, you would probably think, okay, he's going to make it like on Metal Sonic. It is going to be the Metal Sonic race, and it's going to be this really cool animation of the famous Stardust Speed race, right? No. This one, I'm going to tone it down a bit. Instead of having this insane fight with Knuckles and Sonic and focusing on Knuckles as a character, this one is also going to focus on a character, but it's going to be Amy. We're going to see a bit of her perspective as she follows Sonic, to the Little Planet. And she's seeing how crazy the environment is there. but obviously we're going to get a glimpse of her determination to follow Sonic and maybe get an idea of what she specifically saw in him to be following him and, you know, end up getting kidnapped by Metal Sonic. And then we're going to see a bit of their reunion when the Sonic rescues her ultimately from Metal Sonic and rescues her from the collapsing planet. Like, I think that would be an interesting idea for an episode. Like, we're seeing glimpses of the overall events of Sonic CD and some of the cool zones of that game, but we're following it through the innocent lens of Amy, you know? Not every episode has to be super insanely action-focused, maybe. Like, obviously we can see glimpses of that cool action in Sonic CD and, like, the Metal Sonic race and stuff like that, but I think this one could be a little more chill. And the reason why I say that is because we're going to get to episode 5, which easily, the key moment I'm going to pick for this one is the game is Sonic Adventure. And you already know how much this game means to me. You guys know how much I love Sonic Adventure. And the key moment I'm going to pick for this is easily Perfect Chaos's Flood. Like, obviously this is like such a predictable moment, right? Because Perfect Chaos's Flood is like the most iconic thing about that game. But what I decided to do is not only will we see, you know, the flood itself, but we'll see a bit of a lead up to that flood. Like, we'll obviously see the lead up to it and what leads up to it. And we'll also see flashes to the past that really explain his rage. Like, explain why he's so ticked off and why he's flooding Station Square at this point. And, you know, why things are going so badly with the plot here. Like, I think that would be really cool to do for an episode. Just show Perfect Chaos's Flood in this cool epic animated anime style, and that's it. Like, it doesn't really have to go beyond into like the Super Sonic fight or anything like that, but whatever, that's the big thing. Alternatively, I'd consider like choosing Gamma's story, like maybe doing a recap of his story. Like, if you have to do something else for Sonic Adventure, you could maybe do that, but I don't know, like either one of those works. But obviously Perfect Chaos's Flood is just way more iconic in terms of a key moment from Sonic Adventure. Now, if it was Sega picking a key moment, they would probably pick, I don't know, Big Fishing or something, but moving on, episode 6. So next up is Sonic Adventure 2 in terms of the next mainline game. And for this one, it was tough, because here's the thing. You're probably thinking I would choose something with like Shadow or Rouge, because obviously they're the big new characters introduced in this game, right? Well, I'm saving something for them a little later. So what I decided to do is I decided to take this chance to focus a bit on Eggman, because obviously we're intertwining a character or a set of characters or something like that with each game, and I don't think really Eggman has his own mainline game. So I decided, since Sonic Adventure 2 is one of Eggman's best portrayals, this could be a chance to do something really cool with him here. And I don't know what to choose exactly. Like, ideally, you could probably go with the scene where obviously he blows a hole in the moon, but I don't think Sega would go for that, because obviously now that scene is a huge meme, and even I'm like, okay, I love that scene, but come on now, it's like a huge meme now, and if we chose that moment, you already know the internet would be bringing up all the Snapcube memes, and it would be like, it would like take away from like the epicness of that moment being animated. Like, I really do want to pick that moment, but I don't know, man. I don't think it'd be the best choice nowadays. So maybe we could just get a simple scene of him raiding like the pyramids, or him, you know, going through one of his levels from SA2, and just seeing, you know, his mentality as he's going through the events of Sonic Adventure 2. We get glimpses of some of those iconic events from Sonic Adventure 2, but from the perspective of Eggman and how he's more determined than ever to take over the world. I think that would be really cool. So have this episode be from his perspective in terms of representing this game. Next up, episode 7, Sonic Heroes. And this one, for a second, I didn't know what to do for this one, but ultimately I decided for this one, I want to focus on Team Chaotix. And this one is going to take a page from Pokemon Generations, where it's not entirely going to focus on portraying an event from the games. Because for this one, I want to focus on Team Chaotix just before they get their mission at the start of their story mode in Sonic Heroes. Like, basically, it's going to be like day in the life of the Chaotix. You know, it's going to be a more chill episode again, you know, after a more intense one where the Chaotix are kind of just going about their day, chilling. We're going to get an idea into the philosophy of how Vector works as a detective. You know, maybe you get a little more insight on Espio as a character, because I really do like him, but we need a little more on the Chaotix as a group. Like, maybe get a glimpse into how they met possibly, or something like that, and just them doing their daily life of detective work, you know, them helping out other people throughout the world and stuff like that. I think that would be really cool to have like a Chaotix focus episode to represent Sonic Heroes. And at the end of the episode, we see the scene, you know, where they obviously get dragged into the events of Sonic Heroes, and that would be kind of a cool way to tie into that game. Obviously, there's some cooler things I probably could have picked, like maybe something with Team Dark, maybe with something with Team Rose or Team Sonic, but part of the reason I didn't do that is, again, I want these episodes to focus on the various characters throughout this series. So I decided that since the Chaotix are probably not going to shine in any other game, this is their moment right here. So yeah, that's why I chose them for this episode. Next up is episode 8. And for this one, this is going to be the first one where I'm like really cheating, because this one is going to be loosely based off the Sonic Advance trilogy and a bit of Sonic Battle. Because this episode is going to center around Cream, and it's going to be her, you know, just going through a bit of her daily life. Like, she's going to come home to her mother and just, you know, talk about how her day was great and stuff like that. But then she's going to head out and get flashbacks to when, you know, she got dragged into Eggman kidnapping her mother and all the craziness of the Advance trilogy, and kind of doubting herself a bit, you know, to whether or not she wants to go on these dangerous adventures herself, because obviously this is a child. This is someone who theoretically shouldn't be on all these dangerous adventures, but she kind of already has been, and in the end she's gonna always, you know, choose to fight for the right thing, just like Sonic and Co. would. And this would show that Sonic doesn't just have, you know, like his influence doesn't just rub off on his close friends, it also rubs off to, you know, other peoples he's met and interacted with. And I feel like giving Cream a chance to shine in this way would be really cool. Like, I don't know, maybe she could have a moment with the 𝗬, since like some of the other games focus on much other stuff different from the 𝗬, so maybe this could be a chance to where the 𝗬 can shine, and this can be a little more of a cute episode and just a chill one. But now that gets into episode 9, and this is going to be an interesting one, because for this one, I decided that this one is going to be loosely based off Shadow the Hedgehog, and realistically, let's be real, you know, Sega is not doing anything with Shadow the Hedgehog again, possibly because, oh, the edge, but for this one, I'm going to cheat a bit by having it similar to Sonic Heroes, to where we see glimpses of the events from Shadow the Hedgehog, but it doesn't entirely focus on a key moment from Shadow the Hedgehog. Because even I have to agree that, you know, trying to animate something from Shadow the Hedgehog in this day and age would kind of be very weird. Like, if we have this crazy episode where Shadow is shooting guns at gun soldiers and monsters and all that stuff, it would definitely be a crazy tone shift. But at the same time, I don't want to like ignore this game entirely, and I don't want to have Shadow just be backseated entirely from this series. So what I'm going to do is, for this episode, I'm going to make it a Team Dark focus episode. You know, Shadow is on a mission, you know, breaking through an Eggman base, and he's working with Rouge and Omega. And this would thus give a chance to give them a moment to shine. Like, maybe Rouge is more focused on stealing the treasure from this base, and Omega's just focused more on blatant destruction. But then we get a look into the psyche of Shadow, and he's thinking back to his past a little bit, to where he's having flashbacks to obviously what happened with Maria. He's having flashbacks to maybe like Black Doom trying to convince him to give up on humanity and to not bother saving the Earth. And then ultimately it would end with him focusing back on Team Dark and focusing back on helping out the people of this world. And I think that would be a really good episode for Shadow. It's something entirely within his character. It's not him being an edgelord. It's not him being mean to other characters for literally no reason. It's him, you know, being all about business with thinking about the past maybe a little bit, but not too much to where, like, obviously things are overly edgy and just out of tone for this series, you know? I think that would be really cool for a Shadow episode. Alright, so next up is episode 10, which the game I chose for this one is Sonic Rush. And for this one, what we're going to do is we're obviously going to focus on Blaze, but this one is going to also kind of cheat in that it's not going to focus on a key moment from Sonic Rush, but rather it's going to focus mostly on Blaze within her dimension. Like, we're going to see her back in her dimension and kind of get a bit more world building for that, you know, the world with the koalas and stuff like that. I still can't believe the citizens of Blaze's world are freaking koalas and stuff, but whatever. We're going to see Blaze in her daily life as a princess, and we're going to get flashbacks to maybe her childhood, you know, and why she had to hold in her emotions and her powers so that she didn't hurt other people. And maybe through those flashbacks, we also see a glimpse of her, you know, beefing with Sonic in Sonic Rush, to where she was fighting him. I think that would be really cool. Like, we see that, you know, back in her world, she's still kind of being her closed off self like she was at the start of Rush, but we see she's a little more open now, you know, after having worked with Sonic and 𝗂. So that could be really cool for an episode, you know, just a day in the life of her while getting flashbacks to some of the stuff that happened in Sonic Rush. Next is episode 11, and this is the first game where it's not mainline at all. I think most people could kind of agree, which is the Sonic Riders games. Yes, I decided to give an episode to the Sonic Riders games, but I feel like, you know, the Riders games could deserve it because it's probably one of the most significant Sonic spin-off series, and probably one of the most unique, because the 𝗵𝗲𝗯 Rogues, they've made some decent appearances throughout the series. Like, Jet was even in Sonic Generations, I think he had like a trophy or something like that in that game. I don't know, don't quote me on that, but whatever. I want to give an episode on Sonic Riders, and this one would obviously focus by extension on the 𝗵𝗲𝗯 Rogues. Maybe it's like a day in the life of them, to where like Jet is obviously working with them on a mission to where they're robbing someone or something like that, and he's thinking back to how Sonic managed to beat him in a race, and that ticks him off. Obviously, it like gives us a glimpse into his inferiority complex against Sonic, but it also shows that he's, despite the fact that he's this cocky leader of this thief group, maybe it shows that he still has morals as a leader. You know, he still cares about Wave and Storm, and like during the mission something goes wrong and he's willing to go back and fight for them. So it shows that he is a thief with honor, and thus gives us some more character development for the 𝗵𝗲𝗯 Rogues as a group. I think that would be really cool for like a Sonic Riders kind of episode. So yeah, now we move on to episode 12, which is Sonic 06. Ah yes, everyone's favorite Sonic game, I'm sure, right? Again, realistically, this is a game that probably wouldn't get an episode in like a series like this, but of course I'm gonna give Sonic 06 some love here, because it is undisputably a big part in Sonic history, whether people like it or not, and I do think something cool can be done with this. So what I think they should do is focus obviously on Silver. This is his debut as a character, and what I think they should do is kind of do a day in the life with him, you know, focus on the opening events of his story mode, where we get a look into him in his bleak future. He's trying to survive this horrible city on fire, maybe fighting off some of Iblis's monsters and stuff like that. And overall, that can be the episode, like just seeing Silver kick butt against Iblis's monster, you know, flying through the city, wondering how things got like this. And maybe at the end of the episode, as like a little teaser or something, it can be like that moment where he meets 𝗵𝗲𝗆, and for that can be the end of the episode. Alright, so episode 13. Oh boy, so this is another game that's debatably a mainline Sonic game, but whatever. For the sake of making an even 22 episodes, I'm counting it. We're doing Sonic and the Secret Rings. Yes, we're going to give some love to this game. So, this was tough. There's not really a specific moment. I think undisputably is like the iconic moment of Sonic and the Secret Rings necessarily. I don't know what moment that I'd really want to see animated from this game 100%, but I guess if I had to choose to get another really cool like action focused one, maybe we can have Sonic versus the Eraser Djinn, like when he's pulling up to that final area that like leads to his final fight with him, and we can see a little bit of his interaction with Shahara, and then he confronts the Eraser Djinn, fights him, and I don't know if we'd cover the entire finale. Like, I don't think we have time to do that. But mainly just that showdown with the Eraser Djinn, and maybe this could be like one of those episodes like in Pokemon Generation. Some of the episodes kind of deviate from the original story and show like a theoretical bad ending in a way, so maybe this could be one of those episodes that do that. But obviously, you know, we know things work out in the end. Well, like, it ends kind of bleak, but we know things work out in the end. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't really have a solid grasp on what to choose for Sonic and the Secret Ring, so if you're like a big enthusiast of that game, maybe you can pick out a better moment than I picked out. But that's just what I would choose there. So that brings us to episode 14, which is Sonic Unleashed. Oh boy. Oh, what to pick for this one. Now, I'm not picking the opening. Now, you would probably think, what? The opening's the best part of the game. That's like one of the coolest moments of the whole thing. And it's like, yeah, but like, the opening is the opening. That's already like a really cool animated sequence in of itself. Just doing it again, but in an anime style, like, I feel like that's just repetitive. So, I have to pick out a moment that's like not as well defined with Sonic Unleashed. So, what I think would be really cool is just like a normal short where maybe half of it we see like, you know, Sonic and Chip going through this like one of the towns or one of the places they visit, and it's like really chill, you know. They're exploring around looking for maybe sun medals and moon medals and stuff like that, and we see Sonic running and doing his thing. But then towards the latter half of the short, you know, it gets to night and he obviously turns into the werehog, and then we get this cool action sequence of him beating on 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏's minions, and I think that would be really cool, you know, just to like represent the half and half theme that game was going for. It would kind of obviously step on like similar toes to Sonic Night of the Werehog, you know, but I think if you're going to do a short in Sonic Unleashed, that's the best way to do it, you know, capture how that game captures like Sonic during the day, the Werehog during the night, and that's that. Obviously, if we want it, we could probably do something with Eggman Land or maybe 𝗏𝗏𝗀 and the finale there, but I don't want every episode to be like this big, to focus on the big climaxes of the series, because as cool as some of the climaxes of this series are, like, I want it to focus on other areas, and I think his bond with Chip in that game, and focusing on that for at least half of this episode would do Unleashed justice. I don't know if every Unleashed fan would agree with me there, but yeah. Episode 15, Sonic and the Black Knight. Oh boy. So remember I just said that I don't want every episode to be focused on a climax? Well, for here, yeah, I want it to kind of focus on the climax. Like, the climax of this game is so cool, man. Like, just seeing, you know, Sonic alongside the other knights confronting Milena and him transforming into, I think, is it Excalibur Sonic? Whatever the Golden Knight Sonic form of that game is. I want to see that animated, bro, like in an anime style, and just see him fight Milena for a bit. I think that would be so cool. Like, there's all sorts of moments from Sonic and the Black Knight that you could probably see. Like, we could probably see like a montage of him fighting the other knights, and maybe if we want to do like a montage of fights throughout the game, that could be kind of cool. Like, see a bit of his fight with the Black Knight and all that stuff. But, you know, in terms of like a moment I just really want to see animated in this series, that would probably be the one I would pick. I'm sorry. So that brings us to the end of the 2000s, and now we're officially in the 2010s era, and this is where I'm going to be struggling, folks. This is where I'm going to be struggling to pick like key moments and like key characters to focus on, because these games, man. Okay. Alright, so episode 16. So, for the first mainline game we're picking here, Sonic the Hedgehog 4. And I struggled for a minute, man. I struggled to pick out, like, who I want this episode to focus on, what moment I want to do, because it's Sonic 4, y'all. You already know the drill. But remember how I said I didn't want the Sonic CD episode to focus too much on Metal Sonic and to focus more on Amy? That's because I realized, oh wait, Sonic 4 episode 2, I could use that as a chance to give us a really cool animated Metal Sonic, you know? Instead of like wasting an episode entirely for Amy, I could just use this as a chance to get our cool Metal Sonic fight. So yes, we get a cool animated version of the Metal Sonic fights in this game, like maybe the one on the carnival like stage. I think that would be really cool. or maybe like the last fight. That could also be cool, but then again, that's like a retread of the Stardust Speedway fight. But yeah, overall, this episode would focus on Metal Sonic as a character. Like, we get a glimpse into his psyche and how he thinks he's the real Sonic. We get flashbacks to obviously him in Heroes and him in CD, and why his grudge against Sonic is so strong by this point. And I think that would be really cool. Like, it would make Sonic 4 as a game look so much cooler than it actually is. But yeah, undisputably, that's what we would have to do there. Episode 17, Sonic Colors. Oh boy, y'all know how I feel about the Wisp. Y'all know how I feel about the Wisp, but honestly, if we got like a little short that shows a montage of Sonic using the different Wisp powers in different situations against Eggman's robots, I think that could be cool, because some of the Wisps could be really cool in like a really cool animated style. Like, that could be really cool. So much cooler than whatever the heck the stupid Sonic Colors Ultimate shorts were doing. But yeah, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the Wisp, and even though Colors as a Sonic game isn't my most favorite anymore, I still, really think that some cool good can come from this, because Colors is not the worst Sonic game out there, I'm not really struggling to pick moments from this game. There's quite a few moments, actually, you could probably do, like the final battle, or that moment where Sonic tries to unravel a freaking black hole. Like, there's all sorts of little interesting moments you could probably do something with, actually, in Colors, despite, how Colors' story is. So that brings us to episode 18, and that's gonna be Sonic Generations. And man, oh man, unfortunately, for the first time, we do not have a new character and set of new characters to pick, because this one is obviously a game that is mostly focused on being a nostalgia trip. Like, this one primarily focuses on Sonic running through old locations, just like this whole series is supposed to. So this one is gonna kind of suck, because what I imagine this one is gonna be is maybe it'll be like Sonic running through these zones that he ran through in this game, but we obviously see Sonic working with his younger self, and I think that could obviously lead to an interesting dynamic in terms of like the animated stuff we could see. But it would feel kind of repetitive considering all the stuff we already covered in this series, Like, obviously I still want to represent Sonic Generations, because it's another game that's undisputably a mainline game and a very important game in the series. But like, this is probably going to be the episode where it's like, man, this is lame, because it's just focusing on old stuff, and that's kind of what the series as a whole is supposed to be doing. So yeah, dumb, but whatever. That's going to be the Generations episode. It's going to be a montage of Sonic running through the zones in this game alongside his past self. Bleh. If you have a cooler idea for what this series can do, I don't know, but or what this episode can do, then feel free to suggest it. But yeah, man. But even worse, we're coming up on episode 19, and Sonic Lost World, oh god, oh man. See, again, the problem is I have to choose a new character, to really focus this episode around, and the only ones we have are the Deadly Six. We really are gonna have a Deadly Six maybe focused episode, of them, maybe this episode can do what the actual Lost World story didn't do, and show us how Eggman gained control of the Zeddy, and how they feel about being under control of this stupid mustache man. Like, maybe if we get a glimpse into what the Zeddy are like as a people and their past, that could maybe be interesting. But like, bro, I don't want to do a whole episode around the Deadly Six, but I kind of have to, because they're the only new characters in this game, and they're like the biggest part of this game. Like, this game has nothing else that interesting to focus on. Like, the areas are so generic, and like, man, there's no real insanely cool action sequences that this could offer. Maybe like the honey, that one moment where Sonic's running down the honey place, that could be really cool to see animated. But other than that, like, it pretty much has to focus on the Deadly Six, because they're the big characters of this game. So yeah, this is probably definitely going to be the worst episode if this actually happens, but whatever, man. Moving on, episode 20, Sonic Mania. Again, another game that is mostly focused on old stuff, so like, it's gonna feel a bit repetitive, but at least this game has something to work with. Like, I think what could be really cool seeing a montage of this game's new zones, like get a glimpse of a fully animated sequence in Studiopolis or Press Garden, that could be insanely cool. And I think to spice this one up, what they could do is feature Mighty and Ray, you know, since this was their big return and their big debut in the mainline series. I think they could be the characters to focus this around. I think it would be really cool to throw a bone to them and have them like fight the 𝗵𝗿𝗶𝗁 maybe. I think that could be something really cool. Like obviously Sonic Mania already has like a full animated kind of series tied to it, so maybe it'd feel a bit repetitive, but obviously this would obviously be its own style. And hey, maybe this could be a chance to see Mighty and Ray fully voiced. That could be something really cool, right? So yeah, that's my pick for Mania. You know, something maybe involving Studiopolis or Press Garden and centered around Mighty and Ray. So 21, Sonic Forces. Y'all already know I don't like this game, but I actually, despite how much I hate Sonic Forces, I think there are some interesting moments that could lead to a really cool animated episode that like briefly focuses on it. And I think what could be cool is, obviously we focus on an 𝗂𝐶, like which 𝗂𝐶, I don't know, just some randomly generated custom character that you could make in Sonic Forces, whatever. It focuses on the 𝗂𝐶 and their confrontation with Infinite. I think that could be really cool, you know. Obviously, we get a sequence of them trying to confront Infinite and still being scared of them after what they did to other people that tried to step up to Infinite. I think that would be really cool. Obviously, I could probably focus this episode on maybe Infinite himself, but I don't want to do that because I'm not trying to see that stupid I'm not weak scene reanimated, bro. Like, better animation is not going to make that dumbass scene any better, so just focus on the 𝗂𝐶 and focus on Infinite, like, terrorizing them with illusions. I think that could be really cool, and you could probably do some really cool animation stuff, too, with that. Like, you could have, like, the environment, like, trip out and melt and stuff like that, and, like, really terrify the 𝗂𝐶. It could be kind of like a horror-esque episode, which is kind of what Pokemon Generations did sometimes. Like, some of the episodes there got really scary, and I think this could be a chance to, like, be a little, you know, horror-like in terms of an episode, like, actually make Forces look cool. And that brings us to 22, the final episode of this series, and the final mainline game to tackle, which is obviously Sonic Frontiers. And this is kind of a hard one to pick because I haven't played Sonic Frontiers. It's the one mainline Sonic game I haven't played yet. So, and even though I have been spoiled on the story and I do know key things about it, I don't know enough to where I don't have a grasp on what's like the most iconic moment from that game. Like, I guess maybe Sonic versus Giganto. Maybe that's like a big moment people really like about that game, and seeing that animated could be really cool. But other than that, I have no idea on what to pick for the key moment to like represent Sonic Frontiers. Like, I guess the Giganto moment, that's like a moment I see everyone talk about. So if that's a moment that people truly think is the most iconic part of Sonic Frontiers, then there we go. I guess that's gonna have to be my pick there. But yeah, I do think Frontiers maybe has some potential because obviously the boss fights and the music there can be kind of cool, but Sonic Frontiers, maybe I'll talk about it another day. But yeah, with that, we've covered all 22 episodes that I could think of for this series, this theoretical series, and which games I would like to represent, which ones I personally count as mainline. And yeah, that's gonna have to be the end there. Now, of course, there are some games that I missed, and if there are some games that you think should have been in my lineup here, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. I'm open to feedback around that, but for the most part, I'm confident in which games I chose, what I decided to theme each episode around, and you know, how overall to structure this series, because if it happens, it could be really cool, but I'm not expecting it to happen. This is just a dumb idea I just felt like rambling off about because I'm bored, and I just want to talk about something actually fun with Sonic instead of ranting all the time, you know? But yeah, that's gonna be it for today, folks. This has been 𝗧𝗪𝗏, and I'm out. Peace.